What is up, guys? Welcome back to a brand new Brawl Stars video. Today we're going to be talking about gadgets. It's just going to be an off-the-cuff video because I literally edited all day yesterday trying to finish up Kairos' video on gadgets, and it really turned out fantastic. Definitely check that one out if you haven't already. But I still wanted to talk in my own words a little bit about what I think gadgets are going to do to the game and generally what my favorite ones are. Let's go ahead and just hop right in. So guys, in a general sense, gadgets are just a button that can be used 3 times, even though it may be balanced differently in the future. So there are different amounts of uses based on what brawler it is, but in the first iteration of it anyways, all of them are 3 uses, and all of them have some type of function that complements the negative sides of the brawler that it's on, at least for the most part. It is important to note that these are only buttons. They're not like a control stick or anything like that. You have to just click the button to use whatever function it is, including the ones that are, directional, like the dashes and things like that. They are going to be in the direction of your control stick or auto targeting on your opponent that you're nearby. So that is kind of a bit of a concern. I mean, I think that some of them would have functioned better with actual joysticks to control them, but overall, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Now, I do want to mention that I do think some of these are going to be absolutely game-breakingly good, and some of them are just kinda okay. For example, I think that Frank is absolutely going to be busted with his gadget. 3 uses of a game-breaking gadget that allows him to not be stunned, not be knocked back, not be stopped or slowed in any way, shape, or form when he's using his attack, super, or walking. He's completely immune to it. He obviously still takes damage, but overall, I think that that is a ridiculous buff, and I think that it really complements his negative so significantly that he's going to be busted, especially in the top tier of players, because people are going to know exactly when to use these gadgets, and it's going to be just ridiculous. Being able to drop a super with over 10,000 HP and guarantee you're not going to be interrupted is really good, especially if your opponents make any mistakes and group up at all. And you can use this 3 times per game. That is insane. That's gonna make your 1v1s better. It's gonna make your 3v1s better. It's going to mean that if they group up at all, you're gonna take them out probably. If you have your super, they're done, okay? It's gonna be ridiculous, guys. And I think that that's probably going to lead to him getting a nerf at some point in the near future after these are released. I can't imagine it going any other way. Another example of an absolutely ridiculous gadget that's a little bit more niche is going to be Tara. I think that she's going to be absolutely ridiculous on maps that favor that particular gadget. She can get full vision of the entire visible map to her and her team for 5 seconds, 3 times a match. That is insane. For Snake Prairie in particular, I think it's going to be busted. And in maps where you just have a lot of invisible opponents, or, if you're going up against a Sandy or a Leon, you're going to be able to see them as well. It's not just brawlers that are in bushes. It's every invisible brawler. For whatever reason, they're invisible. Unless something comes out in the future that nullifies this, it is going to remain very powerful in specific instances on specific teams. For a very different reason, I do want to point out 2 particular brawlers, even though I think there are a couple others that are going to have a similar impact. Spike and Daryl are going to be very good with their new gadgets, and it's important to point them out because their burst damage is insane. It's so high. The amount of damage they can output just if all of their bullets hit or some of their bullets hit is ridiculous, not including the obvious, elephant in the room that their damage output is normally really good with their supers and with their attacks. The amount of damage they're being buffed by in a short period of time against, safes or against Ikes, things like that, it's ridiculous. Seeing Spike and Frank on the same team is going to be just unstoppable in Siege, I think, in particular, because you're going to be able to jump in on the Ike, stun the Ike, and then have Spike go in for upwards of 10,000 damage per use of his gadget. That's crazy. Otherwise, I think my favorite gadget that's being added in this update is Penny's. In particular, I think she has the best utility out of every single gadget that is being added. You can just use it in so many different ways. If you want to destroy something in particular, a barrier or some grass or whatever, it's going to be able to be used in that way. It's going to be able to be thrown on an opponent where they can then get stunned, then get blown up by her gadget, then take damage from last blast. There's a ridiculous amount of utility in being able to throw throw this in certain situations and then blow it up and do whatever you want with it based on your strategy. I think right in the beginning, Penny is going to be a little bit underrated. I think that she's probably going to have people that think that she's very, very good, a lot like people that are very good at using Dyna Jump. It has a very high skill ceiling to be able to take full advantage of it. In this case, I think the utility it provides is going to be more and more accepted and more found out over time as high tier players, high trophy players play in tournaments and use it to success in, you know, different strategies and in very, very different ways based on how aggressive or control oriented their team is. And I'm pretty excited to see that all happen. I think that this is going to be a really big one. The final star power I think is going to be absolutely insane is Nita's. Now, at first glance, you might think that just because she has to build up her super and use her super to take full advantage of it, considering how short of a range compared to Penny or other longer range brawlers Nita has, it may be a little bit underused, but I don't think that's entirely true. I think that Nita in particular has a very good case for being one of the best brawlers with her new gadget, because she can use her hyper bear star power in particular to be able to throw down her bear. Immediately upon throwing her bear down, she can use the stun, and her hyper bear is going to run over and deal a ridiculous amount of damage in a very short amount of time. On top of that, she can also use it as a pseudo heal if she wants to use her other star power, but I think hyper bear is going to be overall the best version of this, especially because you're going to be able to throw this on a safe or throw it on an Ike and use the stun to stun the Ike or the safe, or around the safe. I guess the safe doesn't need to be stunned, but you know what I mean, okay? The brawlers around it are going to be stunned, and that's going to mean that it can do damage for longer or do damage to the actual brawlers themselves and take them out to make it easier to get access to the safe for the rest of your team. There's a really strong case for this being one of the best gadgets in the game, and I think that it might be a little overlooked like a few of the others in the beginning as people get used to them. And you know, the more damaging ones are going to obviously be used very often in the beginning, more often because they're easier to use. And in the beginning, it's going to be harder to use some of these as they're just going to have a higher skill ceiling. They're going to take a while to get used to. Just like Dyna Jump in the beginning, everybody was crying about it being way underpowered, and then suddenly we've got a few players that are unreasonably good at using it, and they've just been practicing and eventually they can take full advantage of it and do things that you should not be able to do with throwers. It's just not right, okay? So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of the same situation where these are going to be sort of underused maybe in the beginning, but in gadgets cases like Nita's, it is really good. And again, I can't wait to see this in game, man. It's so good, especially I think in solo showdown and heist. I think it's going to shine the best. So overall, how do I feel about gadgets? Well, I think, to be completely honest, that they're the most impactful thing that they've added to the game since it came out, since it released. Literally, since even beta, I think this is the most impactful update that they've added to the game. I think that gadgets are going to change the game forever and make it so the skill ceiling is so much higher than it was. Making sure that you're saving your gadgets for the perfect opportunities, knowing when those opportunities come, exactly how or when to use them. I mean, it's going to make it so there's so much more skill to the game at the highest levels, and there's more options for people to play certain brawlers in certain ways. Again, like I was mentioning, Penny can be played very control oriented based on her combination of star power and her gadget, and in this case you can also play her in a very aggressive manner now, especially with this particular gadget being added to the game. It was a little bit more difficult to do so successfully once people were aware of the strategy with Last Blast, but in this case you can initiate the explosion of Last Blast on your own. You could do the damage whenever you want to without the aid of an opponent that's not really aware of the strategy. So it's going to mean that aggressive Penny is back on the menu, guys, and I think in a lot of cases a very similar thing is going to be taking place for quite a few of these brawlers. It's really great because the level of success that people are going to use these gadgets in are going to vary significantly, okay? It's going to depend completely on how well people are able to adapt to them and how well they're able to use them with each star power, and the strategies they're going to have is going to vary wildly based on the skill ceiling of the game as well. I think that the best possible example of this again goes back to Dynamite, where you're going to want to use Demolition if you're 99 out of 100 players, but if you're Lukey Bear, then you're gonna use Dyna Jump every single time without fail because it's so good because you're good at using it, okay? The skill ceiling is massive with that star power in particular, and I think we're gonna see the same type of developments with a lot of these gadgets, and it's just really exciting as someone that loves having a high skill ceiling in games to see this type of thing being added. This is the single most impactful update, again, in my mind and in a lot of other people's minds since the release of the game in beta. This is huge, okay? And I cannot wait to see just the competitive meta as a whole develop around it. I can't wait to see the plays that get made in high stakes games and tournaments and things like that. This is really unprecedented for Brawl Stars, and I think that you really should just make as big of a deal out of this as it really is for the game. It is huge. But yeah, that's gonna be about it for this one. Let me know down in the comments below, what do you think the best gadget in the game is going to be on release? I'm sure if you're watching this video, you've seen Kairos's video already, so definitely let me know based on all of that. What do you think the best gadget's going to be? Why do you think it's going to be the best gadget? Any particular strategies you think people are going to be using with it? I'd love to hear that and more down in the comments below. Let's talk about it. I love this update. It looks absolutely fantastic, and I cannot wait to make more content on it for you guys. So I will see you very soon for the next one. As always, until then, peace.